Okay, we should be live. No intro, unfortunately, folks. Of course, my backup drive has failed. Thank you, Western Digital, for being very predictable in that department. But we have a guest on tonight, Matt, the unceded. We're going to post a link to his channel. He's done some great research work from the Club of Rome to Maxime Bernier. And we'd like to welcome you, Matt, to Race to the Bottom. Thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me, Fred, and good to see you, Canuck, as well. I am surviving much like yourself, my man.
Well, it's a we've had a tough 2 years, but I think we're going to have a rough one next, 2 to 5 years with the upcoming new digital IDs and eating bugs and what else? I don't know. What else can we? Every degenerate code in their book, I guess. Hey, Canuck, how's it going?
Good. Hi. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for having on.
So, what do we want to talk about tonight? It's kind of an open discussion. We can pick any topic.
Well, could we start with Matt's work and like what he's been doing with his
Absolutely. Let me. All I have is this scrolling thing here, so I'll put the view up here. Share the screen. There we go. So. All right, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Well, it was about 10 years ago, roughly, when I started to see that the system in and of itself wasn't really built for us. I'm going to keep that story to myself, but basically I realized that so I had stumbled 10 years ago onto the lockstep document, actually, and when I saw that within the document where they talk about things like masks and temperature checks and seeing all the right info
Are we
use,
still?
considering I have studied the occult and how different political systems work. So that's how that cookie crumbles.
Cool, cool. And what's your next video going to be about, if I can ask?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, where the next video is going, but either on whatever, if there is going to be some kind of surprise event, very much like the trucker convoy, if something very big like that happens, those are the things I like to prioritize. And then on a secondary list, I like to call out some of the individuals that were most likely to run into, in particular at a protest. I just figure calling out controlled opposition makes the most sense in comparison to going after certain politicians that are virtually untouchable, with all their security around, etc. So I might as well go for the people that we're literally going to run into, whether that be Chris Sky, Maxime Bernier, or Pat King, whoever. So I don't know what the next video will be about, but if there's something big, it'll be about that.
I do have a question, since you bring up with the politicians being untouchable, and they quite are. Like, we can't even mock them anymore, it seems. The situation that not too long ago happened, and I think it was in Alberta or Manitoba, there was a gentleman that approached Chrystia Freeland in a lobby and started, yelling expletives and all kinds of shit. And I get it, like, people are upset, but that seemed very staged to me. I was just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on it? Canuck, maybe you remember that incident had happened about a month and a half ago.
Yeah, it came across as either staged or incredibly opportunistic, but I lean towards it probably being staged. Like
I'm
if
with
you're in high office,
yeah.
you have to expect criticisms. It comes with the territory.
What's your thoughts on it, Matt?
I'm with Canuck there. I don't have any solid proof of anything, but the fact that she had no security around is like she said, it's either incredibly opportunistic and you just got that right moment, or it's completely staged. But I lean more with completely staged.
Yeah, because I mean, I get it. People are sometimes unhinged, and yet I'm there sometimes. I got a lot of anger pent up in me, and I just want to unleash a whole bunch of fuckums on a lot of these people. But I think it's better if you just kind of approach them calmly and say, "Hey, listen, why would you do this? Why would you do that?" Let them stumble. Like, give them enough rope; they'll use it. And I find a lot of situations they don't, right? Like, I mean, there was this one situation where Trudeau was walking in a bar and someone went to take a picture with him and he thought it was a fan. And that guy's like, yeah, Trudeau sucks. And he said it so calmly and it just made him look like a idiot, right? That's the way, if you want to shock someone or just kind of mock them, it's better to do it calmly and in a way that is more effective than just yelling at a person. Because, for the other people out there, like the vast amount of normies, they're not going to look at it in a good light. Even if that person is a jackass, and I'm talking about the person that it's directed to, it just doesn't come across right. And I think we could be a little bit better for it. Like the way you approached Maxime Bernier. That was fantastic. No yelling, no shouting, just direct questions. You had your paperwork all ready for you there, and just boom, 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 one point after another. And he was just stumbling all over himself. That was great.
The only thing to say is that in somebody's defense, like, when you fight angry, you fight blind, right? Mm-hmm. And these people are merciless in what they've done to us. But with due respect, Chrystia Freeland even is a small fry in comparison, and the Rothschilds are even small fries in comparison to the papal bloodline hierarchy, like the Borgias, the Este, Conti, etc., Orsini, whoever. Which there's an Orsini fellow, what's his name, Ciro Orsini, who's actually buddies with Sacha Stone, one of like a new age shill, basically. But yeah, the connections are just wild. But anyway, you're talking about Maxime Bernier. Yeah, I've had my fair share of encounters with him, and the last time I saw him, which was, by the way, nowhere near as epic as the video clip you guys aired on your channel, but the last time I encountered him, I literally had a document that he had worked on at the SSHRC right in front, and I showed him the picture of himself. And he's like, "Oh, I had nothing to do with that," and goes on to talk about the World Economic Forum. Like, how is that a defense?
Yeah, there was a video of him a long time ago when he was just entering the political realm and being the alternative choice. And there was a video where he was being interviewed, and they asked him, "Well, Mr. Bernier, you did vote for the language laws, the LGBT language laws, and I'm just wondering, why would you do that and then kind of speak against it?" And it was just so funny. His response was like, I did not know. I just made a mistake. And he sounds like he's a bumbling idiot, because why would you make that kind of mistake? And I know what happened. I have a feeling that most of these people don't read their itineraries. They just go into their chambers and they just sign whatever's presented to them by their assistants. They ask their assistants to do a little bit of a proofread. They glance over like 100 pages. They only do about maybe 5, and they just sign off on it. They don't even know what they're signing off, because this guy was an embarrassment. He lost an important international portfolio at the sight of a thong, and that lady was not only like a like a pass me around.
Literally talking about how he got the name Mad Max, and basically what he did is he had NATO documents that he left behind for his Hells Angels affiliated girlfriend in his car, and then he loses his position, his job as Minister of Foreign Affairs. At the very least, if that was truly legit and not staged, he would have actually probably been questioned for treason, leaving NATO documents for the Hells Angels, basically.
Right.
So there's fearless Mad Max for you, your hero.
Yeah, and the fact that she, like, it was, just upon discovery that lady, his girlfriend, was, she was also a listed lobbyist for the real estate agencies or the builders in Montreal, and we know about Montreal how rotten to the core that city is.
Yeah, Montreal is definitely rotten to the core. Yeah, I didn't know that about her. What sort of what was the construction property? What was the company involved in real estate? Sorry,
I don't have that on me. I can send it to you and I'll search it out. I have it in my documents buried in one of my drives. But she was a listed lobbyist for one of the builders. I think it was Montreal or Quebec City.
Okay.
And that was another notch against Bernier. And like, why was he? Did she have easy access for lobbying for this company? So yeah, it's a muddied affair with him. And then there's a couple other gaffes. I mean, but look, I'll admit I did vote for him, and the only reason I did, and that was the only second time I voted in my life, was the fact that he did bring up the issue around immigration, which is really close to my heart. Like, to me, immigration is the sole reason why we're going through a lot of these issues.
Yeah, well, I'm not against immigration as a principle, as a notion, but in terms of what the government is doing with it, are you familiar with the term fifth generation warfare?
No, why don't you let us know what that is?
So fifth generation warfare, new way of waging war, rather than dropping, well, not really new, but instead of dropping bombs on somebody, you infiltrate them from within. So how do you do that? Immigration, right? So you bring in different people from different countries and they infiltrate different avenues of the system, from banking to any type of piece of infrastructure, really. And this is, how a country like us keeps such close ties with, say, China, for instance, right? Because they're literally running the infrastructure of our country, or rather, we should say their henchmen are. And this is how immigration is used against liberalized countries. So,
well, I'll set my kind of like where I stand on immigration. I think immigration is used as and even now I would be totally against immigration from any country at this point, because we're maxed out. We're no longer vacant, but we like to say that we are.
Yes.
But I'd like to call what you just said is fifth columnists, right? The idea that we have 4 columns that hold the base of the house. Now we're knocking one down. We have a 5th one built out, so we have some insurgent group there that works from within the system. The problem with immigration is that you don't know what you're letting in, especially from competitive countries like China, India. The Philippines are not necessarily a competitor, but they're a competitor for our work. And like, I'll give you an example, just a very basic optical example. If you go to any Tim Hortons or McDonald's, they're usually owned now as a franchisee by Indians or Chinese, rarely Chinese, but mostly Indians. And it's usually staffed by...
Bangladesh, yeah.
Sorry?
I said India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, yes, right. Like that region.
And it's usually staffed by Pinoy or Indians, and usually they're older people, above 50 range. And these jobs were particularly for kids, right? They would work during the summer or evenings after school, earn a little bit of cash, learn how to save money. That's all gone now, right? So they go to university, they come out, and they immediately want the big bucks, but they never learned how to manage cash flows or any of that basic education that a lot of them lack. And what happens is that there's, especially, I think it was Vancouver had written about this, and so did CBC a long time ago when they used to do some good work, which was saying that a lot of the remunerants that specifically the Filipinos get, most of it goes outside of the country. It doesn't even get spent internally. And these people live in horrid conditions anyway. They live in like rooming houses, so there's like their fellow countrymen will have a home, and then they rent it to all these people, and they stay in these horrible conditions. And they're no better off than here because they don't make enough to get a step forward. They can't afford a home. They can't afford a decent car or anything like that. So they're just caught in a miserable state. But it's not much different than it is back home. It's just they have a little bit of extra money and you send it home. And this is you're basically having a slave force. That's all they want. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and that's why you have a fiat system where they just keep printing money and all this hyperinflation right now. You notice the cost of groceries in the grocery store when you walk in and see that milk is up 25 cents and it's just been, 3 days or something. So, yeah, it's just a empty system, a slave force, the way you put it. Yes.
Yeah, and I believe it's also a replacement. So when you bring in, I've lived in China for a bit, and I can say that there is a different modus operandi in China than there is here. The West is really well known for, especially around its citizenry, for its offense against the government. They don't trust the government. They give them limited authority because we live unfortunately in this system, right? But we still do not trust the government. So we have a tendency for protests and voicing our concerns against the government. Whereas in countries like China, it's not necessarily the case. I mean, they do have uprisings. People don't talk about it, but there is a very jingoistic feel. So they give a rise to the national identity, and the people kind of rally against that. So they trust the government. In India, they trust the government. And that's why you have a very high uptake of the vaccine in those countries. I can tell you right now, I'm looking for work. I work in the IT field, and my contract just ended. And I can't, I was having some difficulty, but every company I went to, and these were big companies in Canada, they were asking me if I'm vaccinated or not. And it doesn't matter to them because they have a huge pool of resources. Like, what was it, Canuck, the other day? CIC. This is another good resource to always go to, which is, I can bring it up. It's the Canadian Immigration News, right? And they work closely with the government to bring as many people as they can. And they just recently announced that we've hit that 300,000 mark of entry for new immigrants. And just bring that here. Let me just share that. Okay. So I don't know if you guys can see the screen. So this is the resource I usually go to. I like to look through what their news reels are. It's a group of lawyers. They have a very close tie. They have a lobbyist group that works with the government. And, like, for example, here, Canada's immigration backlog decreases slightly to 2.6 million. We have a 3 million immigration backlog of people trying to get into the country, and they just released 300,000 into the country. So that huge resource pool, sure, we have inflation, but watch this, because for the rich, the inflation works for them, right? They don't have to pay interest on those loans. For us, it's a pain in the ass. But also on top of that, they gain a downward push on wages by bringing more people in, because now they love a huge pool. And what happens is a lot of these people are, they're coming into the country and they're vaccinated. So when I'm asked, "Oh, are you vaccinated?" I said no, and they ask, "Are you planning to?" No, I'm not. Why not? I don't want to, and they just move on, right? And a lot of companies are like this, and technically we don't even have mandates, right? But, here we are. They're still asking it because they know that it's the companies, like you said, the Club of Roamers. They're all part of it, right? The Charlemagne Prize. It's all part of the same group, and they're all pushing this. Business is pushing this because the politicians are just your front-facing front man, right? The sales guy on the sales floor, whereas the guys in the big offices above them in the glass offices overlooking the salesman. That's all it is. That's how the system works. So, immigration also, there was a report made several years ago, and it was a study from Harvard University. I can bring it up, but I've talked about it before. It's called fractionalization, and it looked at like one of the communities in Vancouver, and it made this really nice bubble chart. And what it showed is that fractionalization due to immigration, because there's no unified or uniform group that work together as a single body, they're all pulling on one another, and they're pulling on these interest groups are pulling on the social system, and they're yanking on it, and nothing gets resolved. Things get, let's say the Pinoy might get a little bit more resources than the Chinese, and there's all this resentment. That's why, to me, immigration is the key thing that they used, and they've used it effectively, essentially, into Europe and North America specifically, right? And when I was a kid, they used that, what do you call it? They used the excuse of multiculturalism, it's important, and the other thing was we need people to pay for the pensions. Well, like that system doesn't work, right? It's not a perpetual motion machine, because you need to have a high birth rate to continue the pensions class. So a better thing would be I opt out of the pension for my generation, but you don't charge me income tax. There's a lot of solutions, but nobody's talking about them.
It's funny you bring up pensions, because one thing that people who are about in their 70s or 80s like to ignore in history is the fact that due to hyperinflation, the pensions were worth nothing and potatoes were worth more, and that's where people were literally trading potatoes instead of using the nation's fiat currency. So there you have it.
Yeah, I like. It's a tough one right now. I think we're so fractionalized we can't unify. I mean, here's the thought, and let me what Canuck and yourself, Matt, thinks is this. Do you know how they locked us down? And they themselves didn't lock themselves down. Their business continued, right? It moved forward. They were moving transactions online, blah, 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 blah. And we were, out of work. We still had to make our payments. Nothing stopped for us, right? Mortgage payments were still due, rent, electricity bills. Here's a thought. How about we lock them down? And what I mean by that, if we had a unified sense, right, and which we don't because we're fractionalized, we all just walk off our jobs. We close our computers or laptops. The guy puts his tools down. The doctors put their stethoscopes on the desk, and the airlines, they land their planes safely. They just pack their shit up, and everybody just walks off the job. Boop, close them down. They'd be shitting their pants within a 30-day period, because no money flow, no transactions were moving because people weren't working. We locked them down. But nobody thinks like that. It's always like, oh, the politician's going to save us because, please, daddy, please. It just, I don't know. Like that mindset is so embedded. Sorry?
Vote harder. That's a solution.
Vote harder. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so what do you guys think about that?
In theory, that's awesome. I wonder how we would get enough people to go along with it. That's more of a logistical than idealistic issue. Like, how do we get enough people on board that this would be a reality?
It would have to be societal wide, because like how they locked us down was nationwide, right? They shut us down. They still were financially operating. Let's reverse that. We shut them down. So it's just like, it's basically everybody just goes home, has a nice long vacation. But
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
2 weeks to flatten the curve, exactly. And so what are they going to do, right? They're going to lose their minds. They're going to start like printing, oh, people just walked off the job and stuff. It's the same thing that everybody's losing their minds in Oakville right now regarding that teacher, that disgusting, like the entire school board. And this is the funniest thing. These people get into positions of power, and then they stop listening to their constituents. Well, then you lost my respect, and you do not have authority over me. But take your kids out of school, show them. Every kid, but they don't. I just, it's bizarre to me.
I can understand why people are complaining. Oh, the University of Western or other schools, like, oh, they brought back vax mandates. Like, okay, instead of complaining about the vax mandates or suing for what that's worth, why not just pull your kid out of the school? I mean, your student loan debt's non-dischargeable debt anyway, so it's like, save yourself the money.
Yeah.
You'd financially be better off just spending that 8 months on the couch and binge watching Netflix.
Exactly. And sure, you have to prepare for it. You have to be financially, how would I say, ready to take the brunt of it. You'd have to have enough saved up. You have to have, like, be prepared. And I hope people were preparing. I mean, this isn't over. Sure, the whole mandates and all, now the truth is coming out about the vaccine. But you know what? It's not over. They're going to continue to try with the climate change and this and that. Well, like, I hope your people are preparing. I hope people have prepared. And, like the bank tells you, you should have 6 months, or they say 3 months. Let's try 6 months. And, if everybody had any brains to them, if they're unhappy about the system, they would just walk off. Like, okay, we're done. Let's see who needs who, right? And I think they need us more than we need them.
Well, if I'm going to quote Henry Kissinger here, I think it was Henry Kissinger or Rockefeller. He said, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers." And the fact of the matter is that people don't have the willpower to just drop their shit and walk off the job. It's just, unfortunately, the reality of it is that nobody wants to face the fact that this thing wasn't built for them, and that people are just also short-term thinkers too, where they think, oh, I need this money to feed my family and do this thing. I gotta take the jab to keep my job or whatever it is. For one thing, people just don't have the willpower to be able to do what you're saying. But in theory, it is a solution in theory. But I'd say that the most rebellious thing you can honestly do is develop a sense of independence. Like, whether you're growing your own food, or you build a farm, or you have, different precious metals and or copper materials of use, because there'll be a point in time where cash dies, right? And nobody, I don't think you or Canuck will submit to a social credit system. So fact of the matter is, we're going to be trading things that are actually useful. So you got to start building community by incentivizing people to, I guess, move forward or drop little nuggets of truth here and there. But for the people that are willing to listen, because it's more or less not even about your intelligence, but your willpower more than anything, I'd say. So.
Well, unfortunately, this last year has showed me how people I thought were strong, like, yeah, I want to go to the bar, so I'm going to take the shots. I want to go to a restaurant, I'm going to take the shots. I want to go watch my kids play hockey, I'll take the shots. It's like, wow. Like, you guys are pathetic. I'm sorry, but you are.
Well, for real, you're not wrong, though, at the end of the day, though, Canuck, right? Like, I mean, what can I say? What can I say to defend people like that? Like, I mean, if you're not willing to stand up for anybody's future, your own family's future, you're not going to stand up for yourself. But I will tell you that I will die on my own 2 feet before I die on my knees. That's for sure. Yeah. So,
I think just it's the schooling, right? Like when the left says things like things are institutionalized, they are. They're not wrong about it, right? But it's just how they spun it. It's institutionalized in terms of teaching us that the government is always benevolent. I mean, I see it with my kids when they were going to school. They would come home and say, like they were practicing who to vote for in the schools, and they were being edged towards Liberal and NDP. Not that it really
Right.
matters, because like this party system that we have is a joke, right? But it's just an
Yeah.
example of how things get codified in the what they're trying to propagandize, and it's very slight, right? And it's very Pavlovian even. So this is how they get them generationally, and it's been getting worse and worse. But I think people have been taught for too long to put too much faith in a politician, because if you think about it, right, like a politician, you have to have some sort of weird, psychotic, mental fortitude to think that you're going to go and represent all these people. It's not an easy job. Like you're getting pulled from here and there with all these interest groups, and you have to have some sort of ego trip to be able to think I can rule over these people, right? I'm their representative. I know it's the only system that we have, but I think people put way too much faith in the politician. And here's the other thing that we have an issue with, is we no longer keep, like the three of us, we keep an eye of what's going on, right? Like we dive in to the lobbyist organizations, we dive into the bills, we read all of the documents. That takes a lot of effort, right? Like think about Joe Blow. He's going to work 9 to 5. He has a wife at work probably to keep the bills paid. Kids are in school. When he gets home, he has to, like, who has time for that shit, right? But you need to do it, right? You got to keep an eye on the ball with these people. And the problem is they've made it so that they're beyond the arm's reach. Because I'm telling you, if you have the person at the arm's length, you can put your hand on their shoulder and you can kind of guide them along.
Well, the thing too is when people are depressed, they're also satisfied way too easily at the same time. So any ounce of criticism towards, say, Justin Trudeau will please anybody. But, fact of the matter is conservatives and liberals, they play for the same team. That's the Bilderberg or the Club of Rome or any of those bigger scale think tanks or fraternities. So realistically, you said it's the only system we have, but people are not willing to build a system of their own. And again, that's where it all comes down to willpower. And because if you go down to the municipal level, you have what are generally referred to as action plans, which are like your municipal agenda 2030, right? So people in and of themselves are forced into a position where they are carrying out the deeds of fraternities or other bigger scale politicians than them. And sometimes they can't even read through the infrastructure and don't realize what sustainability really means until it's too late. And then when people are already there and they have their cozy job, they're not really willing to leave at that point. And I'll give you an example here is that the mayor of Beamsville, I think it is, Beamsville, St. Anne's, this is like Western Niagara. The mayor there, he's been on Rebel News, and he hosts meetings and stuff at his house, and he has different people come in that are like part of the freedom organization, like part of the different freedom groups and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if you guys know who Vincent Garces is by chance, but he's in one of those stupid policing groups like Police on Guard for the one of those. But people are pressured to just set up networks and they just go with the flow, right? Without even really thinking about what it is they're doing. And fact of the matter is, people are convinced that we're in a dog-eat-dog world, which is not true. That all comes down to stupid bullshit, Darwinism, survival of the fittest crap that people have been fed their lives. So we have to build what is called community, and what that looks like, I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but develop a sense of independence, whether that be collecting some sort of precious metals, resources, things like that, or learn to grow some food or get some chickens and get some eggs or something. I don't know.
You've touched on a point that I brought up with Canuck in our mini conversation, is that we lack community more than ever before. Like, and again, I always like to spin this back into my main gripe, which is immigration, because I live in China. I literally live in China. Like, all my neighbors are Chinese, and none of them speak English. None of them want to talk to me. Nobody wants to, like, form a community. They have their own community, mind you, right?
Right.
They aggregate together amongst themselves. And if I'm sure if I tried to weasel my way in and try to befriend them, they wouldn't have an issue. But there'd be some little bit of snicker and snackers between them about me, and that's natural. I have no issue with that. But we're fractionalized. How do we create a community when you're isolated in these little groups? Same in like affectionately called Vancouver, right? How do people form a community? And I'm sure they can if they really wanted to, but because we're also being racialized, right? Like we are there is the component of race, which is important, but to further that, we are further being racialized by the government because you constantly have to recognize everybody's differences, and they're already there. So you're hyperbolic about that. And then you're telling me that we need to find a community. And that's very difficult at these times. And I think they got us by the balls. But I think we need to form a community. We need to learn how to fish and farm and hunt. Because I think we're going to get to that point where they are trying, like I know there's been movement on trying to move to a digital currency. That's going to be a little bit difficult because I think people still like to... I think the old-fashioned of us, like the whole tangible tender, right? There's something romantic about holding a dollar bill or a coin. When I do see,
you don't want to buy your weed with a credit card.
Well, it's not just that. It's the tap generation. Have you guys noticed that? Everybody goes everywhere. Ever since these last 2 years, everybody's tapping like everywhere. Nobody uses cash.
Yeah, I definitely noticed.
I everywhere I go, I pull out cash, and people are staring at me like I'm some fucking Martian. And it's funny because I just see people.
I always hand them the $20 bill or whatever, and I go, "Here you go," while it's legal tender, and everybody always gives me a shocked look all the time, or they laugh.
Yeah, so. It's trained now into them because I went to buy some coffee capsules during the. We had a little bit of a reprieve. They like to loosen the pipes because they got to let the pressure out. So we were allowed to go shopping. So I went to redo my refill of my coffee capsules, and the guy would not take cash. And this was a time when I was unemployed, and I've been selling a large part of my items, right? So I get cash, and I said, "Look, all I got on me is cash." And he says, "No, we only take bank card." And I didn't want to use any of my credit card at that time. I just wanted to keep a nice, clean, my amounts just in case of emergency. Coffee is not an emergency. And I said to him, "Well, so you'll take my debit card, yes? Okay." And he has his mask, and he has a double mask, and he's got gloves, and they got those friggin' barriers. They still have them. And I said, "So listen, if I take my dirty cash right now, and I go to the bank and I deposit it, isn't that like you're spreading the system?" But here's the funny thing, Matt. So when we opened up this year, I went back to the same person and I said, "So you're willing to take," and he had a mask on it. I paid with cash. He took cash. So I said, "How come my cash is okay right now?" And he says, "Oh, because, it's safe. Everybody's vaccinated." And I said, "Okay, so why are you wearing a mask?" And the perplexed look on his face was just, you've broken his programming. That's the problem. People are too easily programmed today. I don't know how to stop it.
Well, you can't fix stupid, that's for sure. But you can't. You also can't mold people, really. Well, I guess you can if you're fucking George Soros, but you can't. Really mold people, and you can't bring out willpower in people. People got to find that, and unfortunately, unless people race to the bottom, then they won't figure that out. Unless somebody, sorry, I used your channel name, but unless somebody literally hits rock bottom, then they won't. They generally don't see it for what it is, and it's really sad too. I mean, because people, they look at the next piece of hope, and you bring up politicians. I want to touch on something, how you compared the East and the West. even though there's a difference in mentality toward trust to, say, the government, is they're both Vatican pawn system. Any system is basically a Vatican pawn system or a crown-based system, which are puppets of the Vatican. So, fact of the matter is, it's all controlled by the same hand. It's just one piece of shit versus the other. Like red and blue, it doesn't matter. You're voting for the same. So if I take Maxime Bernier, for instance, right, as you've mentioned, and he's a guy I've encountered most in my time, is that he is not only in Soros's pocket, which I basically mentioned through the Tides Foundation when I confronted him about the social economy, communitarianism Agenda 2030, but he's also in the Koch family's pocket because he used to work for the Montreal Economic Institute, like Canuck and I were saying before. And Montreal Economic Institute is funded by the Atlas Network, which is a worldwide think tank that is largely funded by the Koch family.
Mm-hmm.
And the Koch family also, too, as well, have you guys heard of Marcus Ray or Marcus Anthony Ray Chilcott? Yes?
Yes.
So his girlfriend, her name is Allison Koch, and she is part of that family. And the way I know this is because she attended something, sorry, excuse my pronunciation, it's a Polish surname, but Zajac Ranch. And the Zajac family are one of the lower end rich families that are, maybe even on a lower totem pole than Desmarais, you know what I mean? They're one of the small time, I guess, families that seem to have a lot of influence. So we see that they're mixed up with the Koch family. Marcus Ray is mixed up with them, and apparently same with Bernier. But what the hell doesn't Bernier have his fingers in? Hell's Angels, the Koch family, George Soros, Agenda 2030, everybody's bought and paid for. And if you're going to become a politician, you become bought and paid for, because when you become, for instance, a federal cabinet minister, you swear an oath to become part of the Privy Council, and people just assume, oh yeah, you only get the honorable in front of your name. No big deal. It's a figurehead position. No. The Privy Council is not a figurehead position. Sorry. So, end of rant.
No, it's not a rant. It's very accurate. I mean, like we talked about True North's attachments, right? Where what's her name? Sorry, Canuck, you got to remind me. Anyway, I can't recall right now, but
it gets a little tiresome sometimes.
Yeah, sorry.
Candice Malcolm.
Yeah, Candice Malcolm. And she went on a boat cruise that was run by the Koch brothers. This is like odd, and we gave her an opportunity to come on the show and talk a bit about it, and she's like, no.
Well, but she responded to a piece on my site about how True North was actually they repurposed an old immigration charity, and that became her media company. So she calls herself the founder. So I did a little piece on that press progress one as well. It's like, and then she DM'd me on Twitter, hey, we want to talk to you about this. So I wrote back saying, sure, let's talk. And then she just essentially ghosted me.
At least she took it that far. I mean, Bernier wasn't able to answer a single question. At least she entertained you. She pulled you along a little.
Well, Bernier probably doesn't have his assistant with him to provide an answer. Right? So I mean, I on his campaign, I've heard a few like ins and outs of what was going on with that guy, and I was told that his advisor was saying, hey, don't push that dairy farm thing in your riding and stuff. And he just went and did it anyway. So like he lost that in Boost, right? That was his riding. So, I still get emails from him. I still get these emails, and I never subscribed. They just kept sending it. Would you like to give $5, $3? He sounds like that person from what was it called? Liberty Talks, right? Because she would say, just give us anything, $100, $10, $5.
Odessa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know her personally or anything, but I could tell you she was in Freddy versus Jason, actually. One of the people who got killed. She's a minor actress from what I understand.
Yeah, a little bit of
And
a titty shot there, nothing spectacular, I should say. But yeah, she's quite infamous for that, or not famous. But yeah, she's one of those people. But yeah, there's a lot of grifters, right? I mean, it was funny when Bernier showed up to the trucker protest. He was coming from his vacation, right? He was vacationing in
Yeah.
Florida during that whole
I think he was.
lockdown.
I think he was actually, yeah, he was living in Florida for like 8 months. It's like, yeah, I'm running for prime minister. I should probably head back at some point.
And he just finds himself there competing with other people there, right? On the podium, and he's just so opportunistic, right? Why didn't you come earlier? Why? Like, it's not that type of leader that really stands out and leads the cavalry. He's just the kind of Johnny come lately, and he's like, "Is the battle over? Okay, it's over. Great. Did we win? Yes. Okay." And then he takes the flag and stands there for the photo ops. Yeah.
yeah, people are selected, not elected. So I mean, he's just out to basically be a shit disturber / renegade. I guess he's supposed to, I think, take that role of looking like a renegade, very much like the way the Maverick Party out west sort of takes that role. So just
So
political theater, right?
now that we're talking about like these kind of alt-right figures, what do you think about Polivier and his new appointment as official party leader?
Well, I know he's tied to John Baird, and Canuck has covered the hell out of his ties to the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. And the fact that that's basically a conflict of interest with the fact that he was a minister of foreign affairs. That's who Pierre is in bed with. Also, most importantly, the thing that people point out, using Wayback Machine on the interwebs, if you're familiar, you can find that he was a member of the World Economic Forum. So that says it all right there, you know?
Well, that other deputy, what's her name? Melissa Landsman. She just got into Parliament last year. I had a piece on her a while ago. It's funny. She got Doug Ford elected into into Ontario politics in 2018. Then she turned around, became a lobbyist, and spent the next 4 years lobbying lobbying his government, and now she's in office federally. It's like, so she spent time as a drug lobbyist getting Ford for the premier she helped install. Like, dude, there's nothing okay about this.
Yeah, it's all like
No.
big one club. Like, I mean, you have Mona Fortier, right, who used to be the immigration for the middle class, and she got that position by helping a Quebec politician in his electoral campaign, and her and his wife had some sort of weird relationship. I'm not gonna get into it. I talked about Monia Fortier, if you remember, Canuck. You were on that show.
Yeah.
We covered her a bit. Yeah, there's connections to Power Corp there. So
Right.
all these people, they just don't quit. Like they just keep getting into these political positions, and they all are good friends.
In terms of train wrecks, this is kind of off topic, but I want to share something it's been on my mind for a couple months. Can I bring it up?
Yeah.
Is it? Well, yeah. Can I? Oh, you disabled sharing.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah.
I always do that. Sorry. Here you go. Done.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Now, as pretty much everyone who listens knows, my site got sued last year for $7 million for publishing essentially truthful information. The guy behind it has decided he's going to go sue the Law Society now. And my God, yeah, he wants $500,000 for them, essentially because, well, I'm named in there, some people I know are named. Essentially filing complaints against him, the Law Society complaining, them forwarding the complaints. That amounts to intimidation, harassment. So he's trying to take the Law Society for, I believe it's $500,000.
This guy.
he also wants a section of the law, and this is Galati, of course, I'm talking about. He wants a section of the Law Society Act struck down. Essentially, this is the section that forces, because it's a regulator, it forces members to respond to complaints. Well, that's abuse, that's intimidation. I want that struck down as unconstitutional.
But that's their job, right? I mean, we know that the percentage is extremely low where they actually side with the person who had made the complaint. But that's the whole point of the Law Society, right? It has to be there to, adjudicate any bad actions by the lawyer.
Yeah, so apparently he said there's like 10 complaints in 14 months. It's like, okay, but if it seems valid on its face, the Law Society is obligated to forward those complaints. Essentially, hey, here you go. We need a written response. But again, they're a regulator. They're supposed to do that. But Galati's suing them for intimidation. And I've heard through the grapevine, I'm not sure if it's true, he hasn't actually served the lawsuit yet. I found out because he was bragging about it on a July 13th live stream. So I went to the court website to check it out. Oh no, this lawsuit is legit. So I contacted the court. Hey, can you send me a copy of the statement of claim? And they did.
He's very litigious, and it's really funny how he's part of this freedom movement. And isn't it funny how they call themselves freedom, but there's not much about freedom that they support. Like for the example, this guy, you can't criticize him. You can't even look at the narrative. So the challenging of the narrative, his narrative, is considered inappropriate, and he'll challenge the legality of it. So whose side are you on?
Yeah. And this is something I tell people all the time. If you want to sue somebody in their private life, I don't care. That's your business. You do you. But the moment you start asking the public for donations, at that point, it's a reportable case. That's how I view things. As soon as you ask for donations, I can cover it. And I think that's a fair standard. The lawsuit, I've been
Sorry, I think
former donors.
All right.
I'm not going to mention her name. She donated $1,000 to the vaccine choice case from 2020. Her and her husband. She filed a complaint with the Law Society because, in her views, he wasn't doing anything, which is true. He turned around and sued her for $250,000, claiming this is intimidation.
That's crazy. That's just crazy.
This guy's going to get himself disbarred.
Well, it's more like I mean, I can only suspect here, but it's like Rocco most likely, and I am just putting speculation in the air. I have to throw that heavy speculation up there. That's a lawsuit at me, but this guy, he probably has somebody on the inside who is pushing him to do this, or is literally carrying him. Like I said, the bar is the biggest secret society to me. So somebody's carrying him.
Well, I had one person suggest to me that the suit against me came right after the piece on Action for Canada. It's been suggested that Tanya Gott might actually have instigated that, because that piece from last August did a number on his fundraising. Because nobody wants to donate when it's spelled out why your case is garbage. So don't know if it's true. It's just been suggested. But, yeah. And like he goes on and on. Apparently, like even responding to complaints, forwarding them, the fact that he's forced to address them, at least do a preliminary response. This is intimidation and harassment.
Yeah, and then it's like when you go turn around to actually file some sort of charges for harassment or intimidation, then no, that doesn't work against the Bar Society, does it?
Yeah.
Like, they're not held to the same standards that you, myself, or Fred are, so.
And a bit of backstory for those who don't know it. The first, I guess, harsh interactions were December 2020. I I heard of for the first time his assistant, a woman named Samantha Kumara. She threatened to have the site nuked if I didn't take stuff down. And she like, I should send you the threatening list. My God, they're over the top. I sent a complaint to the Law Society, and the Law Society said, yes, that's not our business. Go call a lawyer. It's funny. It's not till I was sued, and Rocco's, he hasn't proofread his stuff. He was actually on the adjudication panel when this complaint was made. So he was in position to make the complaint against him disappear.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he was on, the complaint was January 2021. He left the adjudication panel in February 2021. So I kind of have to think, maybe was he pushed out? Is that why he's so much animosity? But I'm going to be watching this and see where it goes. But yeah, it's a train wreck. And the other one out in BC, I've been asked to hold off on that until they make their own announcement. They don't want me scooping them. As a professional courtesy, I've agreed to do that. But yeah, this lawsuit originally came about, the one against me and the site, essentially for criticizing his cases. The pleadings are garbage. They don't follow the basics of civil procedure. They have no possibility of ever going anywhere. And here's the exact reasons why. And by the way, it's probably intentional because nobody could be that bad. That's defamation, apparently.
Yeah, telling the truth is defamation of character, supposedly.
Yes. I'm sorry, if you've been a lawyer for 30 plus years, I expect you know how to draft a statement of claim.
Right.
So, there's going to be more updates when the time comes, but that's. I'm just watching the train wreck right now.
Well, just keep it up. I mean, it's not too hard to stand up to somebody who really can't stand up when it's like fighting somebody who's crippled, with due respect, because Rocco can't even draft simple paperwork, apparently.
Yeah.
Or what should be simple or common sense to a lawyer, and he's just stalling as much as he possibly can. And every time you have a retort, it's like, no, you can't do that to me. You can't retort to me.
Yeah. But hey, if you want to publicly fundraise, you open yourself up to public scrutiny. It's
pretty simple, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're taking donations from the public, right? You're literally involving we the people. So you've made this a public issue.
And yeah, I think it's a very public interest issue. And when the slap motion comes, I think I brought that up. I think I've got a slap motion in the works. Essentially, it's to dismiss it as public interest speech.
Right.
The idea being it's public interest. The benefit of free speech outweighs the theoretical harm it could happen. There's slap laws on the books in Ontario, BC, and other places. It's designed to prevent exactly this sort of thing from happening.
Right.
But I'll send you a copy when it's out.
Please do.
Yeah, and anyhow, that was my little laugh. I'm not sure what's up next.
I wanted to cover, just quickly something that I've been looking at Europe, because to me the EU is the prototype for what they want in terms of world dominance. It's always, the UN was the control mechanism and the EU was the pilot. And often what they try to do is, I'll just bring it up here. They'll pilot some of these things through the EU. Can you guys see my screen? I don't know if you can. I should share.
Not yet. Wait.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So, the EU has come up with this, and you're starting to see it, right? It comes through stuff like we have our own like UN who wants to set up a parliamentary assembly in each of the provinces and overall in the nation. And then we have the immigration portal with all the former British colonies. KEDSUG, right? So it's a similar application. Now, I'll just read out here the EU Justice, and this is part of the digital kind of amalgamation of everything, right? So you'll have one justice group for everyone. EU Justice and Home Affairs Agency's joint paper on COVID-19 latest update. They're just covering that piece. This was just this month on the 12th. The EU Justice and Home Affairs Agency's network, which they call JOHN, has released a second update of the joint paper on the COVID-19 response. The newest update contains the further details on the individual and joint efforts by the 9 EU agencies active in the field of freedom and security, which is hilarious when they always bring that up, and justice to deal with the impact of COVID-19. Again, you got to remember that a lot of these people, like 99% of them, are unelected, and when they are elected, they're just elected as bodies to sit in chairs. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the EU JA agencies, CEPOL, EGI, EMCDDA, EUAA, EU LISA, Eurojust, Europol, and FRA, and Frontex provided continuous support for the member states and EU institutions in the meeting of unprecedented challenges resulting from the outbreak of the virus. Now they're moving into other things like migration, and FRA is responsible for migration. And these other organizations are going to be helping put together this digital ID system that they're trying to push into the EU. Some of the things, if I just bring out some of these agencies, CEPOL is a security training firm. EDGE stands for European Institute for Gender Equality, so that's part of that, like they cover that piece. EMCDDA, European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Addiction. EUAA, European Union Agency for Asylum. EU LISA, Commission for Ops Management of Large IT Systems. That's building out the backbone and the infrastructure through ITU, which is the International Telecommunications Union, which falls under UNICEF, which is weird, and then reports back up through WHO now. They're building out the backbones for the digital ID system to work. And then you have Eurojust, European Union Agency for Criminal Justice Cooperation. Europol, just a cross-border intelligence service. So they're like one body will be monitoring everybody else's borders. And then FRA, which is the European Agency for Fundamental Rights, and Frontex, which is a Euro security firm. Union call for a coordinated, joint, and sustainable approach to comprehensively counter it. Again, like this is the European Union, but it's the blueprint, right? This is kind of what they want to implement. I don't know if Matt, you're familiar with the bunting map. So this is just an example of what they want, what they're looking at. Targeted campaigns in Europe and beyond. The rapid alert system consisting of EU institutions. None of these people represent these. They represent in paper these member UN states, but they don't represent the citizens at all. And again, they're so far detached from that particular nation. Most of the time, they're not even there. Like this. Mobilize private sector to tackle disinformation. Implementation of EU-wide code of practice on disinformation. Major internet companies such as Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Mozilla have signed up. I don't know anyone who uses Mozilla anymore, but whatever. And, you can see here, they've been working on this since 2015. That's just one example.
It's too short to do a deep dive here, but Institute for Strategic Dialogue is a group that Canada helps fund. They put out all kinds of papers and policy documents on ways to combat inappropriate narratives. Like certain things aren't real, or certain things, don't exist.
Yeah, I think we could talk about that too. That's what I want to ask Matt about. Like, do you guys feel that the internet is shrinking?
You said that think tank was called Institute of Strategic Dialogue?
Yes.
Okay, there's something I haven't heard of, but I'll definitely be looking into for sure.
Yeah, I believe it's isd.org.
Okay, thank you.
Now, you'll see here, like, usually they'll embed some good with the bad, but we know that usually they use that against us. So you get the normies buy-in with this. So they have a Digital Services Act, which is part of that John piece. The commission has proposed a DSA, which includes measures to counter illegal goods. Okay. Services and content online. Now, I went through these documents, which are included in here, but it's all vague. So what are you defining that? It's not, it's, you can't make heads or tails out of it because you're not telling me what you've defined that
Well,
as.
I suspect it's vague so that it
Right.
can be selectively applied depending on who's on the receiving end.
Exactly.
Exactly.
This is edgy. This is a group that pushes the gender LGBTisms into, and I have a video of it. Like, actually, it's very subtle. Let's open this.
Welcome to AGA's gender mainstreaming platform that will help policymakers integrate a gender perspective into their work. Gender mainstreaming brings a gender perspective into each phase of policy development, whether it be in sport, energy, or education. When integrating gender into policies, it is essential to take into account two main dimensions. The first is the gender-responsive content of policies.
Yeah, Kanak, you can notice the gentlewoman. You know where they're where they're going with this, right?
Yeah, she sounds so harmless.
This means making sure that the specific needs
What's a
and
fucker?
interests of women
Sorry.
and men are equally addressed.
Sorry, you were saying?
Just the images don't quite look human.
They look like they're split like 50-50 something and something else. Like they're ridiculous to look at. I'm sorry.
Like second from the left has like a mustache and beard, but it's like that kind of looks like a woman's body.
Yeah, that's who I was referring to.
Oh,
Yeah.
now I understand. I wish I didn't, but okay.
Notice the two-tone of everyone. I'm not sure what that's about, but it's transhumanism in a way too, and forcing stuff. It's not. Anyway, I'll play the video.
Gender stereotypes might influence the subjects girls and boys choose to study. For example, boys are more likely to study information and communication technologies, while girls are more likely to study arts and humanities. These choices can affect future career opportunities and contribute to workplace segregation. The second dimension to consider is the gender representation in the policy areas. In education, it would be important to look at the proportion of women and men teachers, and the proportion of women and men in decision-making positions at top levels in tertiary education. Gender mainstreaming is a cyclic process which starts from the defining and planning phases and continues through to implementation and monitoring and evaluation. The platform gives a comprehensive overview of the main methods to be used throughout the gender mainstreaming cycle. You can also find out how to integrate a gender dimension into different policy areas, such as poverty, health, the digital agenda, and many more. Country profiles show the status of gender mainstreaming in each EU member state. The gender mainstreaming platform can support policymakers to ensure that public interventions respond better.
Again, just do you see how they're building divides and fractionalizing us into like these little groups? John also is a supporter of the EU solidarity with Ukraine. So they're pushing that agenda as well. And then they have the environmental crime in the age of climate change, the 2022 threat assessment, which you might say, hey, yeah, there's some real big concerns about climate. Like one of them is pollution and waste. I think we could use a lot less of it because we seem to be building bigger packages for smaller items and we tend to be using more plastics. But they never address that. Like, for example, Matt, I don't know if you know, I don't know if you're from Ontario, but we have something called the Green Belt, which was like sort of like a sanctuary.
I know what it is. I'm
yeah.
from Ontario.
Oh, you are, okay. You know that Ford's going to be tearing that up, right, for development. And I'm in like the Stouffville area, so the farther you, like, it used to be all very wooded and nice forests. That's all being dug up now. They're putting up in condos and these big suburban housing. It just, like, no one questions it, because when these people come, they're going to buy cars, they're going to buy cell phones. It's just never ending. But they mean a completely different thing here in this document, which is just really a carbon-based scoring and taxing. And that's basically it. I just wanted to cover
basically getting people ready for a sort of social credit score, but the way that they will do it is they will they use a lot of virtue signaling in their techniques, which is basically exactly what that bullshit video was that you played.
Yeah.
Right? Where they'll show something to you, but if you deviate from that norm, then you either are in a certain case you might be a terrorist, in a certain case you might be a racist, you might whatever. They guilt trip you to move forward and just go, oh, okay, fine. So social engineering.
Yeah, from top to bottom, at every what would I call it? Faction. So sexual, parental, language. They attack everything.
It could be religion. It could be anything that fits into a category that would be that could be used for Marxism, basically, which is any touchy.
Correct. So that's all I had on the docket for tonight. Do we want to cover anything else?
Bullshit video about how women choose different professions, men choose different professions.
Sorry.
But here's the thing: the key word being choice. Like, if guys want to get to engineering or building stuff, I have no issue with that. Have fun. Like, just because people on average make different choices doesn't mean they're oppressed. Like, this is pretty common sense stuff, I would think.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I think that people should have a choice in what they want to choose. And if I don't have a problem with males being painters and stuff. What's wrong with a female getting into programming? It's just, but again, if that's what the percentages is, then leave it be. But anyways, we know what they're doing, right?
And like a lot of women, especially like in their 20s and 30s, they want work that's more family, like hours towards family, so you can be accommodate with your kid's schedule. Like that's perfectly fine if that's the life choice you want.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to the building of a community, maybe going back to some of the traditional ways of raising our families. And I think it worked back then. Why change it? Why stress out the woman at a corporate job? Because men are stressed from it. We take a lot of abuse in the office, right? So personally, if I would have gone into something else like welding than office work, because it's just bullshit. Like a lot of those jobs, if they were to disappear tomorrow, it wouldn't matter, right? Like you still need a guy to fix your car. You still need a guy to do your plumbing and put up your drywall. I don't think anybody cares if accountants are weren't around, or coders. Sure, you wouldn't have your electronic goodies, but it's done a disservice to humanity as much as it's done it's been beneficial.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, things like gender roles, as you were touching on with that bullshit video, is those are things that are just being ingrained and forced into people. Social engineering, as I would say. And a lot of this, in particular, from what I understand with the education in Ontario, at least, it's ran through Anti-Hate Canada, a lot of this. Am I correct in saying this?
I'm not sure. Maybe Canuck knows.
Well, not necessarily them specifically, but there's Actually, it probably is to them, but it's the same out here. They have the whole anti-racism initiative like built into the schools, which I think is at least contributed to by anti-hate.
Right. No, because I swear I've seen their name around it, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, I know that the head of anti-hate, Evan Belgord, I think his name is, he worked in, offhand I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's in one of my videos, the one that has a picture of Jane's top and the Diagolon flag. And that video, I basically go on with the theme about how they want to label people as terrorists and their ways of doing it. And so they've already kind of compartmentalized certain, I guess, types of freedom fighters or terrorists, whatever you want to call that particular sect there, where you have the sovereign citizens, if you will, and then you have the former police and former military and the people that think that there is a political solution to the New World Order. And, you know, you have all these different kinds of categories, but they're doing this on purpose so that people can have different generic labels for people, because unfortunately when we go into the sheep public, some people won't look at Canuck any differently than they'll look at Chris Sky, and that's literally just social engineering. Nothing to do with you personally, by the way, but just the way people are wired.
Oh, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing wrong. No,
It's hilarious how many people follow that guy. Like he has on his Telegram like 60,000. Maybe they're bots, right? But he has like 60,000 followers. But meanwhile, he keeps calling himself one of the greatest researchers out there. But he's not, because he keeps repeating the same thing, like a broken record.
Isn't he on a no-flight list, but doing a world tour? Like, how the hell does that work?
That we were asking the same question.
Apparently, private planes.
Oh, okay. Oh, you can use private planes still, right? That follows a different set of laws, correct?
I guess. I'm not sure. I'm a little curious how he's able to travel when he has all these charges pending.
That too, even in and of itself, is questionable for sure. And like, I mean, we know that his arrests are basically theater, because nothing ever really goes according to procedure. And he was able to film a video in the back of a police cruiser once. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been arrested. Not my business. Not going to go there. But no way in hell was anybody ever going to let you record in the back of a cruiser.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
How are you going to even do that? They cuff you in the back and they sit you in the back. You can't even move around. Sorry.
They take all your stuff when you get arrested.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's bullshit. They expect us to be so stupid and to just buy that this is real. Just like when Patrick King leaves the fucking courtroom and goes into a goddamn limo with blacked out windows. The feds must have been goddamn like telling him what to do. Why by the time the doors were closed? I don't know. I wasn't there. But it's like, who the hell leaves in a goddamn limo? Like,
yeah, well, and nobody seems to question it when you bring it up. Like, the guy's 2 degrees away from Bronfman's, right? Because his father worked at Cadillac Fairview, right, which is an accounting arm or a builder in real estate. And then him and his father set up their own real estate building company.
Are you talking about Chris Sakosha and his dad, Art?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, Art Sakosha, Sky Homes Corporation. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so this is kind of funny. He's two degrees removed from the Bronfmans. The Bronfmans are the bagmen for Trudeau. And you're listening to this guy? Come on.
Yes, yeah. I've heard people talk about the Bronfmans in relation to the Sakoshas, but you've spelled out quite a bit for me, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, because Art worked at Cadillac Fairview, and Cadillac Fairview is a Bronfman organization, right?
The Bronfmans were behind Nexium and XIVM, that sex cult, right?
Yeah, they're the granddaughter.
Right.
Got on a plane. She didn't show up to court and got on a plane and went to the Caribbean or something like that. It's like, this stuff is so crazy. And then here's this guy. Then, I mean, okay, fine. I think, optics to me are important. It's good to, like, for example, I know Canuck had posted in her Telegram channel Enoch Powell, which I think is a bloody legend. And the guy was, speaks proper. He wears a suit and tie. He's coherent. And here you get this guy who starts his career off essentially being on Rebel News. which is
Oh my
hilarious.
God.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah. Freddie.
Yeah, and on Rebel News, they never talk about the Koch family, and Ezra knows all about that, considering he attended Fraser Institute, which is funded by the Atlas Network, and we know that's a Koch-funded think tank, like I said. So.
Yeah. Fred. I think it was in July 2020. Fred contacted me. He's like, "Hey, get home. Go turn on Rebel News." I'm like, I'd never heard of this guy before. Chris Sky. He's like wearing a wife beater shirt. He has like a naked woman on his right shoulder. It's like I'd never heard of him before. Like. I think David Menzies was interviewing him. I was like, "Wait,
right.
how are you doing this with a straight face?"
No, Menzies looks like Mickey Mouse, and Chris Sky with his veneers. He looks like and his like steroid looking appearance. He looks like he belongs on Jersey Shore. So you have Mickey Mouse in a situation. Like, how the hell do you take them seriously to begin with? Like, I'm not out to judge somebody by their appearance, but, like, come on. And then on top of that, you mentioned the Bronfman connection. And there was, in particular, the first thing that I found on him time ago was that at a particular event for the London police, he had claimed that the London police wanted to sue the provincial or federal governments, I'm not sure, in regards to the mandates. And so Chris Sky had used, or Chris Sakosha, I'll call him by his real name, actually, Christopher Sakosha, ended up putting the London Police Service logo onto a advertisement. It's within my Chris Sky video. You can find it. And he was advertising for the for the London Police Service, saying that they were suing the government based off the mandates going on, and he had no permission to use the logo at all. And even the London
Oh, I think we lost you there for a sec.
was actually the address for Sky Homes Corporation. Funny how that one works.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, right? So Chris Sky and Rebel News, I always like to say, like, fine, they do some okay work, but they're always there timed perfectly to create a news story about them, right? Like if it's David Menzies, he always seems to be in a position where he gets knocked or pushed, and then they follow up with a petition, donate to us and sign this petition, like they just did the other day in Oakville, right? They just like,
I didn't realize that Rebel News was there in Oakville, but I just I just wasn't about to attend basically an event like that, because I feel that whole thing with Oakville is just clearly staged, because how many people, even if the political narrative is on their side, can get away with wearing the garb, we'll say, or the fake breasts? How many people can actually get away with that regardless of social acceptance, but in a shop class where that's physically dangerous? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. So that's why the whole thing to me just seems staged an excuse for organizations like Rebel News to be there and have us distracted on that while they're working on a digital ID or some kind of climate change narrative or whatever,
Oh, sorry, I'm just reading the comments right now. Lucky Strike says we should do a deep dive into the Democracy Fund with Conrad Black and Julie Panes.
Yeah, I don't know much about her and the Democracy Fund, but I've seen Democracy Fund, their name on the Rebel News website before.
Yeah, I think
on my list. I just haven't got to them yet.
Let's write a little bit of a side note there to kind of cover these guys. I'm looking at them now, but just to cover a little bit about, because I'm not 100% sold that this could be a psyop, but I do have something here that there is a push, because I pulled out so let me bring this. I'll share this screen again so you guys can see. I'll bring that over. Okay, so there is a huge push, obviously, in the LGBTisms in the schools, right? So I did a gander of how embedded this shit is becoming across Canada. This is an example of Alberta. This is the Calgary Board of Education. John Ware School celebrates Pride, right? These things are not covered in the news. And then we have here, again, the Calgary Board of Education, the 6th Annual GSA Network, which is the Gay Straight Alliance, inspires students and teachers and advisors, right? This is from Vancouver Learning Network. Gender Studies, 12. The elective course provides students the opportunity to explore and analyze, critique, and discuss issues relating to gender, race, identity. Topics includes gender equality, LGBT rights, racism, media stereotypes, blah, 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 blah. So, now if I go over here, they're in the North York School Board, they have something called Equity Inclusivity Advisory Committee, EAC, which is in most of the boards here in Ontario. There's a document there. Let me see if I have it. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Yeah, here. In this document, it outlines one of the people. Just give me a sec. This lady, or him, her. Let me see if I can make it right. Enza Anderson, Canadian journalist, media personality, Ontario politician, and transgender activist. Assigned male at birth. She grew up in Toronto near Jane and Finch, blah, 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 blah. And she's been trying for various positions of power and influence. And it says here, in 1995, she got a job at a hair salon in Yonge Street, which called for her to hand out flyers for the salon to pedestrians in drag. It was during that job a photo of her kissing then Mayor Mel Lastman, that guy that his wife was used to 5-finger discount stores around the town, ended up on the front cover of the Toronto Sun. So this is Enza Anderson. Now, if we go back to the document here, oh, hold on, and we'll do a search. Okay, it's not this one. Hold on a sec. This one is the school board. Okay, I had it here. This is not the one. This is the... Anyways, I can't find it right now. But there was the York School Board. Enza was on the board. They're asking... She wants sort of orientation around LGBTism. And that is scary because, like, you look at where the person's coming from and they're engaged in this kind of stuff. You have, this is the Calgary Board of Education as well, one of their minutes, something like from kindergarten to grade 9. Percentage of students in kindergarten and grade 9 reported to demonstrate respect and appreciation for diversity as measured by student report cards. The general indicators for this report card are: shows concern for the dignity and equality of all, demonstrates appreciation for individual and cultural differences, seeks to learn about them, unfamiliar ways of thinking and living, uses diverse viewpoints. Another one here says, percentage of high school students who report they listen to and respond to the needs of others, as measured by the overall agreement on the compassion and empathy summary measure. Like this, so I don't think that this is just an isolated, PSYOP incident. I think this could be a case that is legitimate. Like it's hard to tell, right? Because like everything on today is fake and gay, but I don't think this is the case in this piece. And I think just as Rebel News likes to do, they'll jump on something that will give them the opportunity for likes and subscribes and petitions and donations. So
they really provide the illusion of being open to criticism, but it's not really the case, especially with, I think it was the last or second last thing you had said. In regards to following certain agreements. I can't remember the exact wording that was there, but we know that you can't really criticize anything that revolves within the category of Marxism because you're just going to get shut down. So it's like a death trap. And also, where I say that this becomes very screwed up is when you refer to somebody as a pedophile, who is rightfully so, and they go, "Oh no, that's a minor attracted person." So you're not open to criticize that? Is that within part of the school system? Do you know if that kind of a thing is actually being taught in the school system?
Give it time, it probably will be.
Probably, yeah.
Well, that's the next thing. I mean, we have the last two, what is it? Cannibalism, right? Is the last sin.
And animals and dead people.
Animals and dead people. Yeah. So.
No, dead people are literally within our food. I'm sorry to say it to you and break it to you like that, but are you familiar with what HEK293 is?
No.
Human embryonic kidney cells. So anyway,
right.
there's different acronyms and combinations of numbers, generally 3 and 3, and they all are for different aged fetal tissue cells. Now, HEK293 is in Coke and Pepsi, for instance, and probably all different kinds of pop, and also within different medical supplies and things too, right? So why do you think that, if you're familiar, have you ever heard of CanSinoBiologics?
No.
Yes.
And
yes.
Okay. So CanSinoBiologics Canada, China, it's basically a Chinese pharma company that partners with the CDC, and so they're just one of the many funders and partners. But what I'm saying is, it's so easy for an and the CDC.
This is a nice rabbit hole to go down.
So I mean, yeah, cannibalism is not only. Sorry, pardon me.
Nice rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry to pile that one on you. It just took a shocking turn right there.
No,
I'm not
okay.
trying to stir up any fear porn. That's Rebel News' job, by the way.
Well, it again. You bring up another point that in the channel I recently was looking at. So California, and this is not new, right? I mean, they're just kind of hyperbolizing. It's, to me, what I call it is reaction theatrics. So like Rebel News, Infowars, John Paul Watson, Chris Sky, Liberty Talks. They're all reaction theatrics, but they never get into the details, the points, and trying to look at what's really accurate. So right now there's a big discussion about California turning its crematorium licensing and expanding it into turning corpses into fertilizer. Well, that's nothing new because it happened a couple of years ago in Washington, right? They allowed that. Now the thing is, that's not the real thing. It's more of it's a carbon push, right? And it's a slippery slope because what does that mean in the end? Like, I know if you couple that with, for example, mercy killing, right? The person said, I have a shitty life ahead of me and stuff. I've heard stuff on CBC radio 5 years ago. They were talking to a young man who's just always depressed and didn't want to live anymore, and he has a right to end his life. And they're
discussing this kind of predictive programming in cartoons, like in Futurama, there was a suicide booth.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned turning bodies into fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of another even more twisted reason for doing that. You know how we've talked before, Fred, about, like, let's say, civil war and wiping out certain populations, how that will likely come about?
Mm-hmm.
If you could just compost people into fertilizer and whatever, it's no big deal. Think of how much easier that would be to cover up mass killings. No, it's not murder. It's just, it happened. Because you can never be certain at that point which people were murdered and which were just,
Again, that's the slippery slope, right? Because you're talking about something that is not defined but can be defined later. And the whole thing is that they're talking about it saves costs. Okay. it's good for, for the environment. Okay, but if it's good for the environment, then why are you building mega structures? Why are you building the concrete superstate? Because it goes along with what you're saying. Doesn't go along with what you're saying, right? These are double-edged swords. You're talking from both sides of the mouth, and I really think this is just another way of, eliminating, or even, I'll say this, even masking the current situation that we're in with the many people who've taken the medical.
You know what?
Right.
You know what?
Yep. We see the increasing numbers rise, and now remember that the myocarditis in kids is a thing, right? So
yeah, by now people's blood should either be boiling or clotting. I get it. Sorry, yeah, it's dark.
Yeah, no worries.
Accurate though.
Well, it is people they don't see half the shit that's going on that people like us who actually dive into things really do. But at the end of the day, people know that what is going on in their faces is wrong at the very least, but they would rather go through there's nothing I can do about this. Well, the amount of citizens or immigrants, anything, really outweigh they outnumber what people would call the elite or dark ones or whatever by significant numbers. And yeah, sure, I'm excluding their pawns at the bottom, like corrupt police or people who work in think tanks or whoever be it have you. But at the end of the day, like Fred even said, if everybody just dropped their shit at their job and just walked off, like, you really wouldn't have this problem, and their whole plan of social engineering and getting through our consciousness, it would just fail. But it's good in hindsight, but logistics, it doesn't really make sense, right? Because people as a whole don't have that willpower. So
I just want to play just an interesting video. This is the new video. This is the new thing, right? And timing is everything, as they say.
I've been into fashion since I can remember. But one day I had a stomach ache so bad I didn't want to do anything. The team at New York Presbyterian said it was actually my heart. It was severely swollen, something called myocarditis. But doctors gave me medicines and used machines to control my heartbeat. They saved me. So now I can become the next great fashion designer. I've been into fashion since I can remember.
So, timing is everything, as I said. Got to get that new, crematorium licensing out for turning human corpses into fertilizer.
Yeah, they're normalizing too heart attacks and strokes, like you were just showing there, and they even have stupid terms that they think people are actually stupid enough to fall for. They probably are, but it's sudden adult death syndrome. I'm sure we've all heard of SAD. It's sad.
Well, there's actually sudden arrhythmic distance something. It's like there actually is a SADS already. It's like this is kind of a derivative of it, like, which makes it even more creepy. Because these SADS that was out there had to do with heart problems as well. So they're really just rubbing it in our faces.
Do you know what the quote-unquote original SADS was based off of, as this one is based off heart and blood issues?
That one was heart issues as well.
Oh, okay.
Arrhythmia was that relates like the heartbeat.
Right.
So they essentially repurposed the acronym.
Understood. The cult literally rebrands the exact same tricks, but they're just packaged ever so differently. It's just like how, in terms of Marxism in North America, you have like BLM, for instance, but the Marxism in the Baltics, when during the split of Yugoslavia, the Marxism revolved around religion because, well, everybody's white there. You can't really use race. So it was basically propaganda showing Islamic propaganda and then Christian propaganda. And they did this between Serbia and Croatia, essentially. and that was one way of splitting the nations, right?
Well, I am Croatian, so I can speak a little bit about that because I was down there during the conflict, actually, right in the middle. The religious thing was very historical, right? It because the Croatians were part of the Austro-Hungary Empire, and associated with the Catholics, and there was like this schism with the Serbs, who are essentially the same people, all Southern Slavs, with Russian Orthodoxy. So that split was already driven there by the Western Europeans, specifically the monarchs. And then when you had the Muslims, there was some, obviously, the Turks that went in during a period where the Western Europeans tried to use the Southern Slavs as a battlefront to stop Turkish inflow. And a lot of these people became Janissaries and essentially Muslims, right? My mother had lost all her property to Muslim insurgents coming from Saudi Arabia, who were heavily funding the Muslims there. Because before, the Muslims were fairly non-pious, actually. But, yeah, I mean, again, it's always kind of like the Americans always messing around, as they usually do, around the world.
Yeah, it's another proxy war, basically.
Yeah, like the one they're having right now with Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, we need to see more cardboard guns, by the way. But yeah, there's a lot of theater there. I don't agree with the context of it being a full-scale war as they describe it. But realistically, this war, quote-unquote war, really covers. Even if you guys are familiar with the chain Pomodoro's Pizza, it's owned by Ciro Orsini, so there's that papal bloodline Orsini, part of the Julio-Claudian era. So basically, they relate to Julius Caesar. So Ciro Orsini owns Pomodoro's Pizza, which is a chain worldwide that happens to be in every country with a network for human trafficking, like Ukraine, China, and the U.S. So we have that going on in Ukraine, and then you also have the International Renaissance Foundation, which is a branch of the Open Society Foundation, basically set up in '88 during the time of the collapsing USSR. So with every crisis, you have an opportunity. I guess George Soros knew that just as well as Klaus Schwab. So.
Yeah, all very interesting stuff, and I think people should pay. And by the way, I need to mention, and this is something that Andy and I in Canuck try to do on every show. We encourage people to look up the references that we put on our videos to do the research, and I know you do that as well, which is very good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have to cover. It's not even just simply about like covering your tracks, but you want to. You want to lead people in the right direction, and sometimes it's a little bit hard when if you use certain links in those websites or whatever literally get removed or whatever, then people tend to criticize you. But such is life, right? I mean, anything that's good they'll try to take down, right?
Well,
exactly.
We are archiving goes a long ways. Like either save a PDF or archive the site or something.
Yes.
I don't think, and I think everybody should practice archiving, downloading. I mean, I have a directory with all the PDFs from all the different various organizations, and I think that's important as well. Back up, and back up. But I feel like, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel the internet is shrinking because I look up certain items and it's gone. It's memory hold. It's just Quant. I switched over from Google to DuckDuckGo, and we saw what happened with DuckDuckGo, and then I moved over to Quant, and Quant is starting to deteriorate as well. So I don't know if you guys feel that way.
I've actually not heard of Quant before, but yeah, like I mean, DuckDuckGo is definitely diminishing in quality as well, but I mean, it's only to be foreseen because, so I understand, Google servers are generally run by CIA, NSA, and then DuckDuckGo's are ran by Mossad, and Mossad and CIA basically go hand in hand like bread and butter, because literally it was a member, I can't remember the name of the member of the SS, but ranking member within the SS actually created Mossad, and Himmler, which is Hitler's second in command, was actually a member of the Jesuit order, and the SS were structured very similar to the Jesuits. So you literally have the Jesuits, which are the front of the military-industrial complex, essentially. Basically, people who are members of the Jesuit order or Nazis create Mossad and work with the CIA paperclip. So there you go. Part of this.
Well, I did a search. I know this is totally anecdotal. Because and Fred remembers Shelley, who was on at the end of last year. She had a bunch of the Nova Scotia Freedom of Information works. I reposted a bunch of her stuff, and I checked just to check on Google, see how much it was. I could find a few things. I go on DuckDuckGo, I found all of them right away. And
really?
I go on Quant, and I found maybe half of them. So depending on what search engine you use, like it really varies how much of the same content you can find.
Right. You know, I noticed that Google tends to repeat some of the same links as well. When you go on pages, you can find like a few different Wikipedia pages or the same one, just repeated. Like, so.
Yeah, I don't really use Google anymore. Like, it varies, it varies the views and stuff. I'm not scrolling down to page 65.
For real.
I think we're getting at the hour. I need to log off for my kids. We're going to spend some time together before they hit the sack. But do we want to cover anything else, or can we close it off?
I didn't really have much else today. I've just been covering various court decisions. Basically, the challenges are getting thrown out left, right, and center. People say, oh, just, take the government to court, take your tickets to court. Yeah, that's all getting thrown out. So
it's lawfare, right? Like, I mean, the going to court isn't going to solve anything. We know that, right? But I mean, it's worth a try. I mean, right?
Yeah. Saskatchewan just handed down a decision. They upheld the tickets for 2 people for being involved in public gatherings. Well, Scott Moe didn't really know anything, so it was a reasonable limit their freedoms because we didn't know what was going on. Wait a minute, the charter says demonstrably justified. I don't have a fucking clue isn't demonstrably justified. Pardon my French. Several universities had vax mandate challenges thrown out. Essentially, the vax passes are upheld. Yeah, the courts are not our friends.
Yeah, they're going to try and throw out those cases, too, on account of them supposedly getting rid of the pass and all this. But, it's just to wash your hands of the dirty laundry, I guess, right?
And, that's something I've talked to Fred with over the phone. The issue is called mootness. Essentially, it's when a court can no longer adjudicate a matter because the issue is over, it's been resolved.
Oh.
So a lot of Rocco's anti-lockdown challenges, I suspect, could get thrown out for mootness because he sat on them for a year or two and didn't do anything. Okay, well, there's no longer mandates, so case dismissed.
Yeah. Bullshit. Well, keep calling these people out because what I will say, though, is that anybody in the freedom movement that you decide to call out, James Topp, Vincent Garcia, Chris Sky, Maxine Bernier, anybody, they're going to accuse you of stirring division. But the reality is they're a cancer and you're the surgeon. It's your job to remove the cancer.
Tanya Gaw, she says I have to say, I downloaded the stream. She suggested that I am a Trudeau agent.
It's funny because that's the typical type of shit that people throw at me, that I must love Trudeau or that I'm Antifa. And it's like, wow, you guys are so obsessed with Antifa. You must be up George Soros's butt crack as you say that. And you don't even realize it, too. So.
I mean, when I got sued last year, it's like nobody would say anything publicly, but privately I got a lot of support. And then actually a few of these cases crashed and burned. It's like people are now being a little more vocal. It's like, what the hell did you do? So, a lot of these anti-lockdown suits they're grifts. They take advantage of desperate people who just want their lives back. Hey, give us money. we'll take care of your problems. And then you don't hear back in a year or two. Well, the courts are slow. It takes time to go through it. Meanwhile, they're sitting on it.
Yeah, for real. That's that's the way that cookie crumbles, right? It's to delay you as long as possible and to take as much out of you as possible, finances, time, whatever. I don't want to like push anything here, but I also too I don't want Fred to miss out on time with his family here.
No worries. All right. Well,
I don't know.
thanks for
I'm good.
coming today.
It's an interesting conversation. I think that maybe we can get together again and kind of discuss it in more detail, because I think these grifters, and I'm glad Matt's covering them, because I was starting to feel a little bit isolated that we were always covering these guys. That they need a little bit more exposure.
Guys out there too, man, because for real, like I wouldn't know half the shit I know about think tanks if it wasn't for Canuck. And also for you, Fred, as well, you bring up a lot about immigration in particular that people don't think about. And that's a subject you're a little bit more well-versed in than I am. But you guys have your strengths, and I guess I have mine in what I'm focusing on. Keep fighting the battle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that, I think I'm going to close it off. If you want to guys stay on, I'm just going to shut down the streams. Do we want to call out Canuck? Anyone there?
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Yeah. Who do we have on? We had Lucky Strike. John, as usual, is always on. Super Strong Cringe Channel. Okay, he's on. That's good. Keeps changing his name.
Maureen. Awakening Soldier.
That's awesome. Okay. Cool. So we'll see everyone next time in a month from now. And we'll hopefully have some more research for you folks.